Many of us are raised to believe that the highest form of morality is a type of visceral mirroring, where we feel an identical, piercing pain whenever we witness someone else suffer. However, this high emotional permeability often begins as a survival mechanism. Children in volatile or unpredictable environments frequently develop a hypersensitive radar system, learning to absorb and read a caregiver's shifting moods to preemptively avoid conflict. Over time, this trauma-induced hypervigilance dissolves the boundary between the self and the other. Without a cognitive filter to distinguish whose emotion is whose, the individual becomes an unfiltered sponge. They don't just observe the environment, they soak up the surrounding distress until they are saturated with a weight that isn't theirs. This saturation leads to a state of empathic paralysis. An observer who is drowning in the same emotional flood as the victim loses the capacity to act as a stabilizing force. The philosopher Paul Bloom argues that relying on this raw feeling is a dangerous way to run a society. He describes affective empathy as a spotlight. It provides intense, blinding focus on one specific person, but leaves the systemic context in total darkness. Our biology is wired for narrative, not data. This explains why the entire world focused on the singular story of baby Jessica in 1987, yet we struggle to feel any equivalent emotional resonance for the thousands of children dying of preventable diseases every day. This identifiable victim effect causes a massive misallocation of resources. We build elaborate memorials and pass sweeping legislation in response to high-profile tragedies, while the faceless suffering of the multitude remains ignored. This reliance on raw resonance inadvertently entrenches our existing prejudices. We naturally find it easier to empathize with those who look and speak like us, turning a supposedly universal virtue into a tool for tribalism. We must separate affective empathy, that automatic contagion of feeling, from cognitive compassion. Cognitive compassion allows us to understand the sufferer's perspective as a distinct data point. Maintaining this gap lets us process the other's pain without allowing it to overwrite our internal state. Arthur Schopenhauer used a famous metaphor to describe the difficulty of finding this precise balance. He imagined a group of porcupines huddling for warmth on a cold day. If they stay too far apart, they freeze in isolation. If they get too close, they impale one another with their quills. This suggests that ethical connection is a constant negotiation of space. We need a middle distance that is close enough to provide warmth and understanding, but far enough to preserve each person's individual integrity. The philosopher Emmanuel Levinas warned that assuming we know exactly how someone feels is a form of narcissism. It reduces the other to a mirror of our own experiences, erasing the unique, impenetrable mystery of their specific suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche was even more skeptical. He argued that pity often functions as a covert exercise of power, where the pitier gains a sense of moral superiority while stripping the sufferer of their dignity and their agency. True respect for the other requires us to honor the boundary of their experience, acknowledging that their pain is a universe we can witness but never fully possess. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus argued for a rigorous internal fortification. He taught that while we should offer comfort and even groan outwardly with the grieving, we must never allow their despair to breach our inner citadel or corrupt our own rational judgment. This Stoic boundary aligns with the Jungian process of individuation. It is the work of separating one's own identity from the collective emotional noise, moving from the role of a traumatized radar to a grounded, independent self. This shift requires what psychologists call shadow work, the realization that our compulsive urge to fix others is often an attempt to soothe our own internal alarms. By confronting these hidden motives, we can transition into sovereign empathy. Maintaining this unyielding internal border is actually what makes the middle distance of connection possible. By protecting our rational core, we create a stable foundation that allows us to reach out without being pulled under. Entering a state of shared destruction is a failure of empathy, not a triumph of it. Jumping into a stormy sea to drown alongside a victim is an act of vanity that leaves two people lost instead of one. The true posture of compassion is found in the rock that resists the waves. It is the ability to stand firm, maintain your balance, and extend a hand from a position of sovereign strength. Real help requires the grounded autonomy to witness the storm, offer a lifeline, and pull the sufferer safely ashore.